Welcome everyone. Today we are back for another item breakdown here at Dead Unlocked, trying to answer the question, is Lucky Shot a good item in Deadlock? Hey everyone, it's Connor here at Dead Unlocked, and I'm excited to get into this. If you're new to the item breakdowns, we basically go through 5 questions with each item. What does the item do? What heroes should you be buying the item on? What game situation should you buy the item in? Is it a core or situational item for the build we're going to look at? And finally, is it a good item? So today we're talking about Lucky Shot. Obviously, this is an item that I've been wanting to talk about for a long time. It has really had a surge in the meta recently, in particular on Holiday and Deadlock Night Shift. We're going to talk about that later in the video. But to start, let's look at exactly what this item does. So it's a 6400 weapon item, meaning that obviously when you buy it, you're going to get a big surge of weapon power. I think if you were to buy it just off rip, that would give you 29% weapon power right away. The item also gives 40% max ammo. And the passive is the big thing here, and this is really the reason we're talking about this item in the first place. So, passive. Your bullets have a chance to be empowered, causing them to deal bonus weapon damage on hit. Bonus damage cannot crit as well. The bonus damage you get is 125% bonus weapon damage, and this has a 25% proc chance. So, every bullet has a 1 in 4 chance to deal 125% bonus damage, obviously getting max ammo as well. So the question really becomes, what hero should you be buying this on? Let's take a look. All right, so generally speaking, when we try to answer this question, we really have to think about what exactly the item does and how that fits into particular, heroes' kits effectively. So this is giving max ammo and obviously a 25% chance to do massive damage per hit. So we can think about this a couple different ways. Do you want your bullets that typically don't deal that much damage in a large clip to have more and more chances to proc? Or do you want to go for more single hit targets with a little bit less, a lower rate of fire where your bullets are going to be dealing heavy impact? That's really the question we need to look at. And that's honestly something that you should be thinking about when you're looking at buying this item, because that's going to influence what kind of heroes you want to use it on, right? So for example, Wraith here on screen, or Haze, or Infernus, or any of those other classic, Ivy even, gun carry heroes that are heavy rate of fire and you're going to be building weapon, you would think those really do make sense. And I think to a degree, those do make sense. However, are those the best heroes to buy it on, or should you look at a hero maybe more like Holiday? So Holiday is a really interesting one. Holiday already has an ability in her kit to allow headshots to deal boosted damage. Now I know the bonus damage cannot crit with not with glass cannon. Spoiler alert, we're gonna talk about that later. With Lucky Shot, but still, what this hero in particular allows you to do, and I would say this is even probably true for someone like Doorman as well, potentially, if you're going gun build, anyone with these like slower rates of fire that really hit pretty hard, you have to think, you can scale rate of fire throughout the game through a lot of different things, like Surge of Power does it. A lot of different things throughout the game do this. If someone on your team is running like a healing tempo, for example, there's tons of ways to increase rate of fire. You can handle that with other stats. But what we can keep here is really heavy hitting bullets if we're running Lucky Shot on a hero like Holiday. And there's some interactions with some other items that really help this to ramp up and be the case. But generally speaking, this is an item you can run in the late game on just about any hero that is a weapon hero that obviously fits into this. So if I were to catalog a few, I would think this could be something you run on Doorman and Drifter, for example, on the top row. Haze, Holiday, Infernus, Ivy. Probably not on Geist, I wouldn't think. Potentially on a Gun McGinnis build. Mirage could run this item. I don't know that you would run this. I've not played a lot of Gun Page. I've been meaning to actually, but I'm not sure if you'd run this on her. Potentially though. I mean, her weapon deals a ton of damage in a split shot build. I would wonder if each individual bullet strand in the split shot could have has their own 25% chance to proc, if it's per time it's fired. It says bullets, so that's an interesting one to think about, but Paradox could run this in a gun build late game. Probably not Victor. Maybe Vindicta feels like a stretch, and then obviously Wraith and Viper as well. I don't think you'd run this on a Warden, but I guess Warden has a similar principle to a Holiday or Doorman, where those are going to be a little bit slower traveling, lower rate of fire items. So potentially you run it on him, but in general, I think outside of what hero, we need to look at some specific game examples of not only when you're going to run this, but really how you're going to run this in game. Let's get into those two things next. All right, so to look at like a specific game situation for when you should buy this item, I feel like there's no better place to look than Deadlock Night Shift, where the highest level players are playing and competing. I've done this in the past, or I've looked at my own games. That's useful too. But I honestly don't play a lot of gun carry, so I don't have a recent game where I bought Lucky Shot to really get into. However, we have OCs here, a very mechanically skilled player for in Europe. Should watch their gameplay whenever you get a chance. Super interesting to watch. OCs bought Lucky Shot late in this one. I watched this from Deadlock Item number 14. This is kind of the post-match recap. And I want to really hone in here on why we're seeing this from OCs only, why we're not seeing it from some of the other gun carries in the game, and then when in the game this was bought. Those are kind of the questions that I want to lock in on here as we break this down. So, just taking a look at it here, OCs gets a lot of other gun items first, and there's one in particular that OCs gets that I really want to hone in on, and that is right over here with Glass Cannon. This is also followed up by Cultist and Hollow Point, Kinetic Dash, and Blood Tribute as well. Then going into, looks like Lucky Shot, and I think that's Sharpshooter right there as well. So a heavy weapon investment from OCs, and if you watch this game, this player damage number should not surprise you. OCs was dealing a ton of damage. 9, 9, and 9 is kind of a crazy stat line as well, just notice that. But this is because this is essentially OC's job in this game. Get a heavy amount of farm, and you can win games with Holiday right now if you can get scaled to a certain level and get into the late game once you have, especially, some of your core items down, which from what I understand are some of the ones we're seeing here in these top 2 rows on OC's buy screen here. But in particular, once you get Glass Cannon and Lucky Shot online, you are dealing unreal amounts of damage. We'll do a sample of this later to kind of show what I'm talking about. But your job in particular is late game victory. So you sacrifice a lot of the mid game to farm, and that's what OCs does a lot in these games. You won't see OCs on screen for like 15 minutes in the middle of these night shift games because he's just off farming and spending the entire mid game preparing for the late game, while the rest of his team now has the onus on them to handle the mid game. And that's where you see some of these different buys come through from someone like, this is my first time seeing this player, and I didn't watch the match, so I don't know how to say their name, but like overseas as well, basically the Paradox and the Doorman here, are buying a little bit more for like a mid-game sustain, and they are not going to necessarily be the ones. Doorman's also playing a Spirit build, so slightly irrelevant anyway, but at least for the Paradox, what the Paradox is doing, number one, is they're a catch character anyway, so they're trying to get people caught in the back line anyway. But there is still a pretty heavy gun, set of gun purchases here, so you might ask, why doesn't this person buy Lucky Shot? Number one, I don't know that they have the souls to really warrant it. It would have been a next buy, probably not, but in theory it could have been. But this item has to come late because we are talking about a percentage increase of your weapon damage here. And so obviously the higher your weapon damage already is, the greater your percentage increase is going to be from that overall number. So that's kind of how we have to think about Lucky Shot, is when we're looking at game situations you need to buy it in. Number one, if you are going to buy it, you need to know that it's going to get bought late and that you're gonna have to sacrifice some of your mid game in order to buy this item. Number two, the name of the item is Lucky Shot. So there is a chance. I've seen so many comments in previous videos talking about this where I've considered covering this item. People are like, oh, I run this item, and some games it feels like I'm doing a ton of damage, other games it feels like I do nothing with it. Well, the item is literally called Lucky Shot and has a 25% proc chance. So that does make some sense just on the nose, but also if you're buying this item incorrectly, it could feel like you're not doing much damage because you're not getting the maximum value out of the percentage damage, the percentage weapon increase, weapon damage increase rather, from the item. So in general, when we're looking at this, it's OC's job to win in the late game. He's really the only person on their team like that. Leviathan did get stomped here by Fearless Furries, but with all the roster apocalypse and changes happening in Europe right now, it really, this is one of those results that just kind of is what it is for this team. Very much a pug team. Kind of, I think both of these teams honestly are. So, yeah. But anyway, this is something that I would look at, and whether this was a Holiday or a Haze or anyone else, Infernus maybe even. I'm covering up the other Infernus. He did not buy this item here, but this has in particular been seen on Holiday because of the clip and all that. So let's kind of look now at, is this a core or situational item, and kind of what does it look like being used? We'll actually get into the training range. I want to show some numbers here and really get into why this item can be so scary. All right, so before we get into fully talking about whether this is a core or a situational item in your builds, because that question it's a little bit different of a question for this item than I would say other items we covered in the past. I do want to spend some time just purely showing us some gameplay numbers for this one. So this is a just base level, not leveled up at all Holiday, and let's just see how much damage we're doing per shot to this Abrams. Body shot 22, that's consistent. Headshot with obviously crack shot, Was a little higher, didn't actually see the number, but headshot is 40. Okay. So let's just buy Lucky Shot here, and let's see where that puts us. 63, 29, 93. Obviously, the numbers are different, obviously, based on you can hear it when it procs. It makes like a little bell noise. There it was. So yeah. So it does decent numbers, right? It still takes, I mean, quite a few shots to take down the Abrams there, and it's still, you know, I can see you. I mean, this is obviously just with one item. This is not a good example of like a game state, right? All those usual things, but I can see you thinking, well, that's not really that great of an item. Now let's pair it with an item like Glass Cannon that on its own gives you 80% weapon damage. So after we buy this, we're actually at, well, I say that, we're actually at 140% weapon damage plus the 60 over here. I believe that's how that calculates correctly. So, okay, so it's the 60 showing there up to 140. That's right. Okay, so we're at 140% base weapon damage plus another 125% whenever it procs. So these numbers are going to start to look very different. 58 base, not bad. Let's see if we can get one to proc. 59, well, of course, you know. 132, that's pretty crazy. With crack shot and headshot, 164. 211. And so these numbers, obviously when you get to where you can fire in a sequence, a few of those click at the same time, you can bring down an Abrams really fast. Obviously, if you start factoring in some other items, like let's say a hollow point, maybe you have Swift Striker, maybe you have Blood Tribute, seeing some people run that with this, etc. You can get into like a mid-game build with this. We have Blood Tribute on. It starts to get pretty crazy, right? This item can get really out of control really fast, and this is what we're seeing Holiday do in some of these games, is if you can let the Holiday get online going into the late game, I mean, those are massive chunks of health going away really fast. I mean, if we take a look at the build again, I mean, this has our weapon damage at 155%. You have stacks here, obviously, that give you the fire rate, so that's currently adding up as well here. But yeah, I mean, late game into the build, you're going to be at a base 75% weapon damage, and then you're going 80% above that, 155 plus 125. Again, it just gets really out of hand really fast. So this is one I would encourage you honestly to go back and watch the previous, I think it was Deadlock Item number 13, right before this last one. In Europe in particular, there's some Holiday gameplay that was really crazy. And if you have the aim and you want to sit through the mid game and farm, this could really be the item in the hero combo for you. Like I said, we're looking a lot at Holiday here because this is kind of the prevalent meta, but this is something that could be run across multiple different heroes as well. But let's get to the last two questions here. Is this a core situational item? And is Lucky Shot a good item? Let's get right into it. All right, so let's start with a more situational kind of play for Lucky Shot. So this is actually my personal kind of work in progress Haze ult build. This is not done, so please do not judge this too hard. Honestly, if you have any tips for this one, let me know. I'm not usually a Haze player, but trying to get an ult build online. The focus of this one is really Focus Lens, and that's kind of the core item in this build. When you get to the late game, I would say Silencer comes next. But then between these three in particular, and this is kind of how I'm thinking about this, those three items, I feel like it's a real toss-up for what direction you go in. Do you go for Unstoppable for stronger ults? Do you go for Curse to really just have someone fully beamed down and vulnerable? Feels maybe a little overkill with Focus Lens, or do you go for an item like Lucky Shot that's going to capitalize on all the weapon items you bought so far and help you to get some crazy RNG in those fights towards the end? Honestly, in this build, I could probably have some more weapon included if I'm going to run an item like Lucky Shot to, again, like I said earlier, capitalize on that stacking investment. But like there are some other items, like some other builds rather, like for this Saya build right here for Holiday. This is different than what I've seen in some Deadlock Night Shift, but I think this is also a really good example of how this can still be a core item, even though you're not buying a lot of gun items to go along with it. So in this build, honestly, we have Resto Shot, which you could either not buy or sell. Opening Rounds is a core item. Kinetic Dash is a core item. And then you have Glass Cannon and Lucky Shot. Everything else is meant to keep Holiday online and using barrels in the meantime. So this is really one of those kinds of builds that's super interesting. It's called a gun build. I feel like that's really a little bit misleading. This is really a sustain, barrel, kind of bruiser build through the mid game until you get into the late game, then it becomes a gun build. So that to me is a little bit of a distinction here. I would call this though extremely core in this build, because this is the end game for Holiday. This is the end game for Holiday right now if you're playing gun build, is running this glass cannon lucky shot combo. So honestly, I'd anticipate this gets nerfed. So, you know, this video may not age well, but I think basically if you're going to run this item as a core item in your builds, you need one of two things. You either need glass cannon, because that's a flat 80%. That's an unbelievable amount of investment. But obviously you have the risk of losing stacks if you die and all that good stuff, but also a lot of great greed and fire rate if you are able to get kills. So has its benefits. Or just buy a lot of weapon items that otherwise give you utility, and then use all the kind of collective weapon damage that you've gathered in your bottom left over here that my face is covering up, and use that to help, you know, lucky shot essentially deal more and more damage. So all in all, this is really one that can go both directions. A lot of items are like this, but it's not like enchanters that feels like it's almost always a core item when it's slotted into a build, right? You're very rarely like situationally using enchanters if it's in a build. I feel like lucky shot has the potential in some builds to be that way, in particular builds that you're not running glass cannon. So if you're running glass cannon, it feels like the setup is to go glass cannon into lucky shot right now, especially if you're into the late game and still playing the game when you have these items. I've seen plenty of games end before the person gets to lucky shot, basically. But if you're not doing that, if you're just going for a general weapon build to kind of scale the weapon damage that way, I would say this is a much more kind of situational, optional time, you know, kind of item, and this extends to whether you're playing on Holiday, Haze, Wraith, or really anyone else. So, at the end of the day, though, honestly, I don't play a lot of weapon characters, so I'd be super curious how people feel about this one in the comments. How are you using it in builds? Am I a little bit off base with my kind of glass cannon one bucket, heavy weapon investment other bucket, you know, assumption here? How are you guys using lucky shot? Let me know in the comments. But as we close this out, let's have a quick conversation. Is this a good item in Deadlock? Honestly, right now, I think there's no way you can say no. I think this item is really, really good. 25% proc chance can feel bad if you go through half a clip, for Holiday, for example, like 7 or 8 bullets and you don't get a single one. Statistically, though, that's not going to happen. You're going to get a couple in there that really, really help you to deal crazy chunk damage. So I would say it's good. I'm also biased. I'm an RNG gamer. I love anything random, anything chaos. Like, that's kind of my vibe. I've always been drawn to this item because of that. Like, anything with a percentage chance to happen, I just kind of love it. I don't know, it just creates this who knows what's going to happen mentality a little bit. So I like this item. I think it's good. I think it's definitely one that's good in the meta right now. And in particular, it just has this crazy connection with Holiday, and the scaling can get really, really out of control. I could either see this being nerfed or just be something that kind of changes in the meta over time. But in any case, right now, this item is, I would say, very, very good. Pros certainly seem to think so. But at the end of the day, let me know what you all think in the comments, and let me know what items you want to see next in our item breakdown series. Happy to keep doing them here. Trying to get as much content out as we can to kind of cover this content drought we're in. I know people are maybe struggling to a degree what to do with the game. I think we're in a great spot right now. I think the meta's good. I think the December update's going to be awesome, and we have some really exciting new heroes in the way. So I personally see no reason to complain about the game right now, but in the meantime, anyway, want to keep fun content like this coming out. So that's going to do it for us here at Dead Unlocked, though. Thank you all so much for tuning in. From our house to yours, we'll see you all next time here at Dead Unlocked.